Well, hello everybody, and welcome back to the Safe and Sound Texas audio excursion. This particular shootout is a follow-up to one that was done with Scott Wilson and my buddy Brad when we did 3 of the Yes albums. We did the Yes album, Close to the Edge, and this one, Fragile. But we knew that the Fragile one would be coming out on the AP Atlantic 75th series on a 2LP 45 RPM set. And that's what happened here in January 2025. Now, ironically, this album's had an interesting life, so to speak, from the get-go. This was actually released right before the end of the year 2024. And so it was supposed to ship out to me, but then Kansas got some heavy snow and was unable to ship for 2 days through FedEx. And then when it got to my house later in the week, it was supposed to arrive on a Thursday, we got snow on our end, and so it didn't show up until Saturday. So right out of the box, I was late getting this one to be able to even review. Then some other things came up, and I didn't get any time to look at it until later in the week last week. And I spent some time doing the shootout and listening on Friday and Saturday, getting ready to put the video out on Saturday evening. Well, as I sat down to start working on the video, I literally started feeling some pains in my chest, and it wasn't because of the shootout. It has been a problem that I had in the recent past that I've been dealing with and getting ready to do some more testing on. But because of the fact that I'd had this kind of feeling before and was told that I might have had a heart attack at that time, even though it wasn't major, that I should watch out for these signs. Well, sure enough, my blood pressure was way up there, like 200 over 150. And so I called 911 and got to the hospital, and they did all sorts of testing as they normally do and tried to bring down the blood pressure, which they did, but it was still high. And going through the process, deciding what to do next, I knew that I had some blockage, and I went ahead and had a heart catheterization on Monday, on the 20th of January. So, it was inauguration day at the same time. So since I knew they were going in there to look at my arteries, I had my own little MAGA, Make Arteries Great Again. And lo and behold, they found a couple of these pathways, these vessels blocked 80%. So they did some stenting, and it's amazing what they can do. And here I am, basically a day later, feeling well, being back at home, and definitely having lower blood pressure, and knowing that I've got some of those passages opened up again. So my apologies on the latest delay that came in this record. It seems like it was snake bit. I know my friend Scott Wilson at the Pressing Matters got out a review, and a few others have been out there, but I spent the time. So I thought I would share with you why the delay and also what my findings were. So going back to what was done before with Scott, my comparisons here were to take the new Atlantic 75th series from our good friend Chad Kassem over at Acoustic Sounds and Analogue Productions. So we know these are really great looking covers, and they are, really well done. Perfect gatefold, really nicely done. I'm a subscriber to this. So this is the one that we wanted to see how it fared. Now, we had done some of these previously with Scott doing them, and so we had the UK Plum original first pressing that he reviewed and gave really good scores to in terms of content. He didn't use any numerics, but he did give some ratings to these and rank them. And he also did the Mobile Fidelity One Step. Also, and so I had loaned him some of these, so also did a couple of Kevin Gray's. Now, they're literally the same cut, but one of them was from 2016, and that is the one that has this gold sticker up here in the corner, kind of hard to see, but that's the one. It's on black vinyl. And the 2023 Rhino, and this is clear vinyl, but the same plates are used by Kevin Gray. And these fared very well in the shootout. Now, these are literally $25 records. So, I mean, they did extremely well. But bring in now the AP 2x45 record and listening for the comparison. Now, as you know, I have two turntables back here, and I'm able to change those with this remote very quickly back and forth between 1 and 2 to be able to hear the difference on these. And so in doing so, I basically listened for the differences between these versions. I wrote some notes on what I was hearing, what I liked, what I didn't like, what I didn't hear. And it is funny when you compare them back to back, 5 to 10 second delay between each. So you're hearing a little section and then hearing the exact section again, how you can really start to delineate these differences, which don't seem as profound when you're just listening to it on its own. And so putting those together and then coming up with some sort of numeric ranking is how I do these. So what I'll do is I'll go through the numbers with you and give you some qualitative and quantitative evaluation of these particular records and pressings on Yes Fragile. The nature of audio comparisons is that the results presented in this video are fully subjective. They are based on my equipment in my listening room using my hearing capability. Therefore, your results may be different. My effort here is to provide you the relative difference of audio characteristics across various pressings.
And here they are!
Well, we have a little bit of an update to our chart in the way we do this. A couple of things have been added and one thing changed. First of all, I indicate in US dollars what the cost of the record would be. Now, in the case of the UK Plum and the MoFi, those are not in production right now or available to buy new, so those are average used prices. But the Atlantic 75th on Analogue Productions is newly released at $60, and the Rhino Kevin Grays, if you can find them, they went for $25 each. You may be able to find them on Amazon or other places. They were a mass production kind of a record. So giving you that information, another thing that I will give you on the far end of the scale at the end here is to talk about cost per rating point. And we'll get into what that means, but it really gets into the value of the record and how expensive it is given the rating that it got. So it is a way to evaluate the value proposition of the purchase. Another thing is the Sonics average on the right is going to be only the bass, mid, treble, imaging, and voices. It takes out the quiet vinyl. The quiet vinyl is merely informational right now as it relates to the rating. So let's get into that. The quiet vinyl on the UK Plum was an 8. It's aged. It's been played some, of course, and probably wasn't the quietest vinyl to begin with. And so it's solid. It's got a little bit of surface noise to it, a few pops and ticks, of course. Your mileage may vary depending on the copy that you have. The Analogue Productions release that just came out was a 9.5 and very, very quiet, as was the MoFi. And you would expect this from this more audiophile materials and pressing plant and approach that they take on these. Whereas the two Rhino mass production ones, which were pressed at a record industry in Holland, use the same plates. The only difference is the 16 is on black vinyl and the 23 is on clear vinyl. So we have, in fact, there 8.5s, which is very decent for a new pressing. Not very noisy, but a little bit of surface contact noise compared to the other higher end ones. Now getting into the pieces that make up the Sonics average. The bass here on the UK Plum is very strong, very solid, high energy. Obviously, it was a fresh tape when it was cut, and it yields a 9.25 and is very solid in its presentation. However, when you get into the Analogue Productions, you get just a little more out of it. And it really does bring home the bacon, so to speak, in terms of the bass. Maybe it's not quite what it could be, but it certainly is more than the Rhinos from Kevin Gray's cut that he did. And we'll talk about the MoFi separately because it's a whole different problem. So decent for sure on the Rhinos, outstanding on the AP. Now, the rating of 12 on bass, what I do is anything that goes over a 10, because a 10 is perfect. Perfect sound, perfect balance, perfect impact, not too much, not too little. But when you go over 10, it means there's something excessive going on or distortion or something problematic. And that causes the rating to get devalued on the average. So this 12 doesn't make it better, it actually makes it worse. But it is to give you a representation of the fact that something is beyond the pale. And that is what the MoFi suffers from. Just an excessive amount of bass, which unfortunately takes away from then some of the other sound because it's punishingly obvious that the bass is overtaking some of the other musicality of the record. When it comes to the mids, the UK Plum is solid with a 9, and there's just a little bit that's pushed back a bit there that doesn't quite have the impact, but you do get that with the Atlantic 75th. Definitely got better on the voices and the imaging, and that in fact was where it shined beyond those other copies that we have, whereas the Rhino Kevin Gray, I mean, here it is, another 9, keeping really solid work there on that cut for such a mass-produced record. The mids only get 8.5 on the MoFi because although they struggle a bit for getting orientation, again, that bass just really bloats over things to a degree to where you miss things and you actually get fatigued on that end of the scale. Now, the treble is the most interesting to me from the positive standpoint. They were all pretty good at that, actually, with the Plum being a 9.5, as are the Rhino Kevin Gray, both copies. When you listen to the Analogue Productions version of this on 2x45 by Kevin Gray, you get everything, and you get it precisely, and you get it accurately. You want to hear cymbal hits that are precise and the touch of the stick on the cymbal and the kick drum in its accuracy as opposed to maybe sloppily, a double kick sloppily sounding like two kicks, whereas this one is very distinct and unique. They hit it out of the park on this. It is so much more joyful to listen to the top end of this. It isn't trebly, but it is bringing out those highs in a way that they were meant to be, I think, and how they are defined. And they're pretty decent on the Rhino as well, but the precision of the AP cannot be denied. Whereas on the MoFi, again, you start to, again, just have too much going on and too much focus on the bottom end, and I just didn't pick up as much on the top end that was satisfying to make that a rating any more than 8.5. Now, as it related to the imaging and the presentation of the record, the UK Plum has a lot going on, and it's a fresh and exciting kind of sound, but it loses a little bit of that distinction on the way it sounds in depth and space because of that. This is an album, where lots going on musically and vocally, and again, it sounds really good and authentic. But when you start to compare some of these other pressings to it, you realize that it's just maybe not able to quite catch all of it because of the energy that they were really trying to impact into the first pressing. The Analogue Productions gets a 9.5 on this. Very nice imaging, very nice placement, very nice separation and distinction. And the Kevin Grays were decent, as was the MoFi here. In spite of some of the bass, you were able to pick up on some of these distinctions, especially on some of the quieter songs and the vocals there, where they were a little more less bass interfered with, and you were able to pick that up. On the voices, we got a 9 for the UK Plum, and the Atlantic AP75 there gets that 9.5. Again, really a nice, clean, clear, articulate voice presentation with the proper imaging and depth to it. The rhinos from Kevin Gray were very respectable, but they didn't have quite the same level of precision in the voices. And again, some of these things, they really sound great, but when you do an A-B comparison, as I do, you pick it up pretty quickly. And again, the MoFi getting an 8.5 there because some of it gets a little lost in this bass muddlement that goes on, and it really does, in fact, distract and keep away from being able to hear the voices in a way that is representative of, I think, what was recorded. So on average, where we stand here is the UK Plum gets a 9.1, as do the two rhinos. But of course, the UK Plum is much harder to find and more expensive. The winner clearly is the Analogue Productions Atlantic 75th, the 2x45 by Kevin Gray at 9.6 rating, and that is clearly the winner. Whereas the MoFi comes in at the bottom with 8.5 because of mainly, again, that bass oversaturation that you hear. So looking at the value proposition, what I did is I basically divided out the cost against the rating that you got. So, to get a 9.1, those 9.1 points would cost you $13.74 each to get from the Plum, whereas for $6.25 per point, you would pick up the new Analogue Productions. The best value dollar-wise, of course, is going to be these rhinos at $25, and you really do get a good value proposition for that. So you're definitely paying more for the betterment. So if you were the average person who just liked this album okay, those rhinos should do you very well. But if you really like this album Fragile and want to hear the definitive version, you're going to be paying for that Analogue Production version, because if you can live with the 45 RPM, it's going to give you the best. If you really only want 33, then the Rhino Kevin Gray is the way to go, whether you pick up the black or the clear. And the MoFi here has the highest cost proposition. It averages about $150 on the market, and maybe that'll go down after these reviews get out. But you're getting... for an 8.5 rating, you're paying the most. So you're getting the worst rating at the most dollars. So $17.65 is what that one ended up being, the cost per Sonic's average points. So overall, with the 9.1 average overall, $8.48 is the average overall. So even at the $6.25 value for the AP, it's a good buy for the best of the best. It's cheaper than the average, so to speak. So there we go. I did make a note there on the Fish, that instrumental that's after Long Distance Runaround. I play these back to back and next to each other, and so I found that the instrumental there, the Fish, faded out sooner by 4 seconds on the Kevin Gray 33s. In other words, the two rhinos that came out in 16 and 23. Why that happened, I'm not sure. I can't say it's the tape because it didn't happen on the AP Atlantic, which was cut more recently. Could be just to make a little more room for the 33 RPM. I don't know what it was, but it was just something that I picked up because of the way I do these particular shootouts. There you have it. This is going to be one that I'm always going to remember, doing this Fragile shootout between the Snow that is unlikely in the Dallas area, and I know Kansas gets it, but they got a whole lot more than they usually do. And then my inability to get this recorded because, a little heart attack got in the way. It's always going to be one that I remember. And I hope you enjoyed some of these new attributes that I brought to the ratings and rankings to be able to give you just a little more information. Because at the end of the day, my goal here is to help you make a decision on which pressing or pressings to buy and which ones to avoid. And if I've accomplished that, then I guess I'm doing my job. Well, if you haven't subscribed, please consider doing so by clicking on the bell below and the all option for notifications. A thumbs up or like is appreciated, as are your comments. So until we catch you next time, thanks for joining me at the Safe and Sound Texas Audio Excursion. Take care, everybody.